When you hear his life story, you'll see why he loves traveling so much, and this is such a monumental event.
I started out as an orphan in Chicago. All right, but here we go, okay? I always thought of myself as an orphan with money and luck, and that really how it turned out. My birth mother and father were medical students that married at Northwestern University. But they had to give me up because people's minds were so narrow-minded back then. They couldn't have a kid and graduate. You couldn't do that. The new adopted parents, he was Greek, Peter Pappas, and his wife was Christine, and she was from Holland. June 26th, I believe it was, 1924, they adopted me. Christina was really a spirit of adventure. I remember sitting in this house with all the girls running and the police running in for the raid. I'm 8 years old watching all this. Long story short, we all ended up in a paddy wagon going to women's prison, okay? Police from a boys' prison nearby, they took me over to this prison. It was a prison for boys 10 to 16, and I was 8.5. So I ended up there for months waiting. The Children's Home and Aid Society found me with the help of my Greek father, and they actually came and got me out of there. Otherwise, somebody said, you know, you could have fallen through the cracks and stayed there for years, like 1,000 of the other kids. Christina lost her rights to visit with me in the divorce. That didn't stop her. Twice, I remember at least twice, going by Greyhound bus all the way to Canada with her. In fact, I remember sitting in the front row of a burlesque theater. I'm 8.5 or 9, and I'm eating bonbons from England, watching these half-nude girls from England dancing in a chorus line. How many kids that age ever saw all that? You know, I was living life on the fast track with her. We used to go and see Louis Armstrong in one club after another, and people used to say to me, "Kid, remember that name? He's going to be big someday." You must be the last person living that still has really been in the Chicago jazz clubs during all those exciting times, and I think I was, and I remembered it very well. We would sleep on streetcars, and that was a great hiding place, and that's why I learned to keep warm. If she wasn't home, if she was off on a drunken spree, I was smart enough to go to a warm Chicago streetcar. They're all electric and warm. She had these which we called colored then, black family, in the ghetto in the south side of Chicago. The best thing I liked about it was the food. We were having soul food every night. Barbecued ribs and southern fried chicken, because she was from the south. I said there were no 5-cent wimpy hamburgers in this place. We really ate fantastic. That was a great experience. And when I left there, she came in the middle of the night. She said, "The coast is clear. We've got to get out of here." And I cried. I cried all the way home because I didn't want to leave. The mother was so kind to me. I had some families that were not so nice. I mean, I'm sleeping outside in Chicago in the winter with the town, like camping out. They taught us how to shoplift. So we're doing, but I didn't like doing that. But probably the most interesting was this German family. This is like 1932, right? This guy was really into Hitler. The last time Christina kidnapped me, I don't know how she found out what family I was staying with. Maybe she slept with one of the guards or something. I see a big, huge sign, "Welcome to the 1933 Chicago World's Fair." It was just like being transferred on a spaceship. I said, I want to see the whole world. Thank you, Mom, for taking me to all these places. And all the bad things that she had done, it was all canceled out. And one day she changed my life forever. How important it is to grab that moment. That one day can change their life forever. And look what happened to me. Everything you'll see in this book from now on, all was because of that one day. This is why you can say you're an orphan with luck and money. I was actually with her on more than one occasion when we were in something called black and tan clubs, where blacks and whites in the 20s and 30s were dancing together in Chicago in jazz clubs. I could have come close to losing my life. She used to drink so much, and I was trying to help her home. Many times we'd fall down in the snow and things. It got to be almost midnight and she never came home. And this is really a scary thing when you think about it. But I had enough common sense at 8 to go from there, walk the 4 blocks down to the streetcar line, and at midnight to stand there and flag a streetcar down. What if they didn't stop? You know, think about that. I could have frozen to death there. In the end, she did an incredible thing by taking me on that one-day tour of the whole World's Fair that changed my life forever.
If you had lived with your actual birth parents, you probably would have been the child of 2 prominent doctors.
It could have never been as exciting as the life that I ended up living, as you'll see in the book, A Lifetime of Adventure on the 7 Continents. You know, that was really a fantastic time. Probably the greatest foster family I ran into was the Turdies. We were just love at first sight. She was a big, heavy-set Mamma Mia, and she hugged me and says, "Welcome to our home." We've always heard stories about self-made men and self-made women and everything. I really don't believe that totally. I mean, you can't do anything without other people helping you. If I didn't have Mr. Turdy helping me, and then probably more important than any, Van Meter, which was an incredible caseworker, helped me, I would have never been anywhere. I was always a kid that wanted to make money. I just heard that Rockefeller started out here in Chicago shining shoes. He puts down his pipe and paper and he says, "Let's go down to the basement and see what kind of wood we have." I mean, that's awesome. I'm shining shoes in a Greyhound bus depot. And I see a sign, a poster, beautiful poster I ever saw in my life. "Come to the greatest World's Fair ever, 1939 New York World's Fair, and see the world of the future." You're the only kid that I know that's been to the New York World's Fair. You've been to the top of the Empire State Building. You don't do anything alone. You need people like a van out there, right? We went out there and took part in a roundup. That was pretty cool. The first car we saw on the lot, 1929 Silver Cloud Rolls Royce, $50. It runs. We passed the thing up for the $50, and we ended up buying the Plymouth convertible. That was more of a chickmobile. I want to try to make it to all 48 states. I hitch from truck stop to truck stop. He says, "Where'd you get that corn? Where'd you steal that corn?" I said, "I found it on the ground." He said, You're going to take 50 cents of your shoe shine money. You're going to take it over to Mr. Wilson's farm and put it in an envelope and put it in his mailbox. You can't be stealing corn." And suddenly I heard people talking and murmuring. I heard a couple people crying, and I said, "You're friends with the car. They were all killed tonight." The headline, it says, "2 Rolling Prairie Boys killed in head-on collision with oil truck." They could so easily have said 3, and this story would have ended right here on page 38 or whatever it was. That would have been the end of my life. 1938. Well, and something. Then I went to the San Francisco World's Fair, and they said, "You know, you must be the youngest railroad buff in America." I'd been on like a dozen or so brand new trains, and other train conductors hadn't even been on that many themselves, so I was really a lucky kid. And boom, this other Hiawatha came flying by at 110, and we were doing 120. I saw a train go by at 230 miles an hour.
Wow, yeah.
We had a week before we had to be in school. Maybe we can make it down and back to New Orleans. And sure enough, we did. December 7th, 42, because the Japanese hit us December 7th, 41. Went down to the Navy Yard to join up with the Navy. I said to myself, "I want to go on the ship that's going to Russia. Go into anything, go into the Air Force, go into the Marines, go into Navy, Coast Guard, all over the world. You'll have adventure, but don't do this, son. Please don't do this." And I walked out, I listened to him. I would dedicate my book to him because he saved my life.
Yeah.
They didn't even ask you for ID in World War II. They saw your uniform. Yeah, hop on. It was fantastic, you know. Long story short, I hitchhiked inland, and people told me, they said, the truck drivers will tell you where the head hunters are. They're selling shrunken heads in there. That these heads were $100 each or $50 each. And then the chief said to me in Spanish, pero usted tiene una cabeza blanco, $1,000. He said, you have a white head, that's worth $1,000. I got so scared. That was my first and last experience with headhunters. Yeah. I was on a Coast Guard destroyer escort convoying cargo to England and protecting it, and it was a very dangerous job too. And I was down in the engine room, locked in the engine room. I got off the ship at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. I'm going to go to New York, and my favorite city, and be away from the ship and everything. There's a lieutenant there, and he saw me with my bag coming in. He said, "Hey sailor, how do you like sea duty?" I said, "I hate it." He says, "What do you mean you hate it?" I said, I joined up so I could see the world. I'm locked in an engine room. I'm not seeing anything. And then he said these magic words to me. Anybody that knows me could tell how this would change my life. You sound like you belong in the Navy Photo Corps. They send those guys all over the world. Can you imagine saying that to me? I said, oh my God. He says, well, you send an application into Washington, D.C., and tell him you want to become a photographer. So I waved goodbye to him. I'm walking across the hall, and he hollered at me, "By the way, sailor, where are you going on your leave?" I said, "Washington, D.C." That's the kind of kid I was. I would just change my plans right then. Went to Washington. Long story short, went in and saw Chief Watson, the head of the Photo Corps, and he said, "Well, we need him down here. Is there any way you could spare him?" He said, "Spare him? You can have him. He's the worst mechanic we've got on the ship. Where do we send his papers before he wrecks the engine?" And before I know it, he gave me a press pass, and he said, go into the White House and photograph President Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt. Yes, they asked us when we went in, the only restriction we have on you is you do not photograph the president in his wheelchair. Because it was crucial that the world had confidence in President Roosevelt. They didn't want to think that a cripple was leading the free world, right? And we would never, not one of us would ever do it. It was our honor. We said we wouldn't do it. Kids 18, 17, 19 years old, they became the fighter pilots. And that's when Churchill came up with this line. He said, "For one brief moment in history, they held the destiny of the free world in their grease-stained hands and didn't let go." When I got to Guadalcanal and New Guinea and all the places, I saw thousands and thousands of white crosses. You never forget that in your whole life. That Ellen and I, we were married in Paris, December 13th, 1958. And we went on our honeymoon to Marrakesh, and we met Winston Churchill. And I knew that quote, and I didn't have the nerve, or I forgot or something. I didn't ask him, "Mr. Churchill, was that your favorite?" I would have loved to have the nerve to ask him that. That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
The next thing I know, somebody said, "We need a photographer right now to photograph the surrender of the Japanese." It was either 106 or 108 of us went ashore. And there were 20,000 Japanese on that island. I said, my God, what if they changed their mind? We're on their base, you know, and we were there to take those pictures and record that historic moment. This Japanese general said, "What the hell were we thinking?" Because I put that in my book. This is one of my favorite pictures of the Japanese saluting the American flag that they swore they would dominate. Of the country they swore they dominated. If it wasn't for the American women and also the Canadian and British women, our allies, the war would have lasted a lot longer. I see these 4 pilots with the parachutes and jackets and everything heading toward. I said, "Hey, where are you guys going? Are you heading toward Chicago?" And all 4 of them turned around, and they were all women. And they said, "No, Sonny, we're taking that pointing to the B-17, to Lancaster tonight. You want to come along? And I liked the way they put me down because in my sailor suit I was 18 or something. I looked like I was 15. And there was a lot of those women that saved this country. American women should be proud of what those women did in World War II. I said, I hear you're hiring crew for the Berlin airlift. Is there any way I could get on? And he said, do you speak any languages? And when I said 6, he said, are you kidding? He said, forget about that. Don't even fill out the application. I had French, Spanish, Italian, German, and Greek. That's 5. And then I knew some Japanese. We came in one time with 2 engines out at Shimiya. We saw this whole line of vehicles with all their lights on, shining on the runway to give us light. They really thought we were going to crash land. I said, if I ever get out of this, I've got to find another way of seeing the world. And I did it, and that was my last flight. I could dash around the world and do the same route right straight across Asia and do it on $80 and do a 20th century version. And so he hands me a $5 bill in his hand. He said, I wish you all the luck in the world. And I look at this $5. This is aside from making the trip. And then I handed it back to him. I said, I can't do that. He says, why? I said, I've come too far. I've come over land for 84 days here from across the world. I will know for the rest of my life that I did it on $85. I can't do it. And I handed it back to him. I thought that was pretty cool. But I met a lot of wonderful people. In fact, Jean Cocteau said the great thing about travel that a lot of people miss. It's not just going to the pyramids and seeing the Eiffel Tower and seeing the great monuments, but the incredible people that you meet going to and from those monuments. We always hear about third world people. There are fourth world people. They still have bones in their noses, and they invite you to dinner, and you become the main course. And they even have a name for it. It's called Long White Pig. I gave up on New Guinea and went there, and that was a great decision, as you see by the cover of the ocean of fire across the Great Sahara to Timbuktu. I am alive because of an Arab truck driver, and he took his sandal and swiped a scorpion right off my leg that was about to strike me. So I took that, and the king, here's the king of the Tuareg, he loaned me 2 of his camels, white camels, and one of his guides to help me get started on my trip to Timbuktu. I saw the Christian Radic. I said, gee, boy, I'd really love to go on this ship. And I blended in like everybody else. And then when it came time for everybody to get off, I just crept down and hid out in the sail locker. Because somebody told me if you're gonna stow away, that's the best place, because no one will find you under all the sails. No, they won't look for you there. And the captain said, you're going to work, no one has ever stowed away on my ship. Long story short, we got to Oslo, all hell broke loose. All the newspapers, all the cameras and everything, they said, we don't want to see the stowaway, we want to see the stowaway. And they all, I know where you're looking for, you're looking for that Sicilian bread. I said, yeah. He said, well, they just sold the last loaf. I told you to get here early, you always put stuff off. And suddenly I see this very attractive girl carrying a long rug. I said, oh, I'll help you. So I took her all up to her apartment. When we got there, she took out her keys, 100 franc chip from the casino in Monte Carlo that she had saved and made into a keychain. I took out of my pocket my keychain, and here I had 100 franc chip that I had saved from the casino in Monte Carlo. The very hour that the Sputnik went in orbit, we went in orbit. Isn't that awesome? I never let her out of my sight after that. JFK said, I'm just the guy that came here with Jacqueline. And I always say, I'm just the guy that came here with Ellen. Yeah, we were married the next year in Paris. We may never be this close to Paris again around Christmas. I would really love to go for the midnight mass at Notre Dame, wouldn't you? And the seats that we had were right in the front row. It was a private box with 2 cardinals sharing the thing, the best seats in the house. And Ellen whispered to me, she says, "Oh my God, look at these seats. Forgive us our trespasses." Do you realize how hard it is on this planet to find somebody to share your life with? You got to really be good to each other your whole life. You know, like we were, you know. We got to Vegas and we came in just a perfect time. It was just sunset. Sammy, Tony, Lena, Ella. We're supposed to deliver the car within 48 hours. And how could we see all these people? He said, "How often do you get to Las Vegas? Take an extra week. Take your time. Show your wife the West." You know. Yeah, we were at the Amina House. That's a famous old British hotel. It was a beautiful moonlit night, and we were in love, lying on this balcony, making love, and looking out at the pyramids. And we said to each other, "Just think, we're not doing anything that Anthony and Cleopatra didn't do." Two of the greatest people we ever met was Ernest Hemingway. I met him when I was going to school in Havana, Ernest Hemingway. And then later, after Elle and I were married, we met his brother Lester, who was really a lot more fun. We became such friends with him. Somebody kidnapped his dog. "You give us $100 and we'll give you the dog." He said, "Okay, I'll be there." He has a double-barreled shotgun. He fires one over the top of their car. He said, "The next one is going through your heart." Our first trip to Russia was really very emotional. This is like 59 or 60, I believe it was. So we started walking and talking with the people, and there was this one woman had a beautiful child in her arms. It's going to make me sad to think about this. And she held it up to Ellen and said, "Why do you Americans want to kill a beautiful child like this?" And Ellen just lost it. She just started crying. She said, "Let me hold her." And she held the child in her arms. She said, "I would never hurt a hair on this child. Why are you saying that? We hear you want to hit us with an atomic bomb. You want to destroy us. We don't want to hurt you. We love the Russian people. We were allies before. We would never do that." And before it was over, they were all hugging each other and kissing each other. It was the most emotional thing. There's no diplomats on the planet could ever accomplish what Ellen did in that 1 hour. It was a fantastic, life-changing experience. We had the privilege of meeting people from Save the Children here in Connecticut. Glenn and Millie Leet, wonderful people that formed it. It was one of the most rewarding things we ever worked on. Probably the best thing I ever did in my life of any travels or anything. But the reason I invented the world's safest wallet is I was flying on the Berlin airlift. This one girl had lost her wallet and passport. So long story short, I was thinking about that night. It kept bothering me. So I came up with the idea of a neck wallet. I went to this company. This girl she was a receptionist. I handed her an angel. She said, "Well, that was very nice of you. I'm going to give this to my mom. She collects angels." And we had 6 different angels, so I gave her all 6 of them. I said, "Why don't you give all of these to her? You're so nice to do this." And "That is so sweet of you." And she kisses me on the cheek, and she whispers me here in my ear, they like giveaways under 50 cents. And it was like insider trading, you know, somebody giving you this great tip-off. And they said, "Well, we like your product. It's a great idea, putting it on a bookmark and all that stuff and everything. What's the bottom, your lowest price if we buy in large quantities?" I said, 48 cents. And they said, "You got a deal, Mr. Christopher." So I thought that was pretty cool. This shows sometimes you have to do things just with your heart, and you never know how it might come back, you know. And I had my tuxedo, my penguin suit on, and I had them taking pictures of me surrounded by penguins with my penguin suit on. I say, where on earth would you meet the most fascinating people in the world? And I thought it would be at my club, this club here, the Royal Geographical Society of England, because there's a lot of explorers and people there, right? But the real place that you meet them is in Antarctica on a ship, 400 or 500 people who've been everywhere. They've been to all the 7 continents. I was in a place called Provo, Utah, and I was talking about my trip in the Sahara about how difficult it was for us to travel through an area of the Sahara called La Terre de Soif et Mort, the land of thirst and death. That's what the French named it, because so many people died there, and camels died there. These big, giant 3 and 4 foot high vultures kept landing in different places all around us. And I looked around. I said to myself, my God, I look like I'm at a convention of morticians here. The whole audience went hysterical. They started hitting their hands together, applauding and shouting. And I said to the person, my God, what did I say wrong? He said, you're addressing a convention of morticians. Like Bob Hope said, the best humor is by accident.
And you had Maria.
Well, that was the greatest blessing of our life. And she's never been a disappointment since. So what more can I say? She's a fantastic kid, and she's helping me here now when I'm on my own to keep me civilized, and I need a lot of help. We couldn't be prouder of Jenny. My God, to have a daughter who's already got her RN. My God, this is awesome, fantastic. She's going to be on the cutting edge. Nothing that kid would surprise me. Fantastic. Okay.
All right.
Good to go, kid.